tea?
Absolutely. So welcome to our 6th episode.
Yeah, so exciting.
So cool to get here, don't you think? So this is After the Last Client, our podcast where we as therapists talk about the things we were typically talking about in our kitchen after our sessions, where we just unfiltered conversations about what's impacting us, what's staying with us, what things we're still holding after those days. And I wanted to say, and I haven't said this before, which is, I don't know if people know this, but you can watch us on YouTube and on Spotify. Yes. These are being videoed as well as recorded.
You can see our beautiful faces while we chat. Yeah, so we're so excited to welcome you to the 6th episode. And as always, we will share our disclaimer that this is purely for the sake of us kind of connecting, reflecting, sharing as therapists and getting to share that with the community and our clients. And it is for informational purposes, but we do want to share that this is not a replacement for therapy. And if you are looking for therapy, feel free to contact us.
That's right, absolutely. At Counselling and Psychotherapy. Thank you for that. Why don't we start by just briefly introducing ourselves?
Yeah.
And I'm going to let you go first.
Okay, we'll switch it up a bit. Yeah, so my name is Hilary McCulloch. I am a registered psychotherapist here at Calming Tree. Fun fact, I used to work as the admin assistant here at Calming Tree. I did that for a few years while I was actually doing my master's program. So I've been here for, oh my God, what's the math on that?
I think around 6 years.
Yeah, that's crazy. But so I have loved every year of it. I'm so grateful to be a part of the team here. Yeah, in terms of my work as a therapist, I mainly work with adult clients. So people ages 18 to infinity, as you like to say. I would definitely describe myself as more of an eclectic therapist, just meaning that I like to practice from a lot of different approaches and modalities, kind of depending on what best fits the need of that client in front of me. Some of my favorite approaches to work from are compassion-focused therapy and acceptance and commitment therapy. I've been in practice a little over 4 years now. Yeah.
It flies by.
It does. It goes very quick. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, I'll introduce myself. I am Melissa Reid, and I'm a registered social worker here in Ontario, which is where we practice out of in the Southern Ontario city of Kitchener. I am also the founder of Calming Tree Counselling and Psychotherapy. I see adults as well, over 18, and I've worked primarily in the area of grief, bereavement, trauma, attachment injuries.
Yes.
With adults. And some of the modalities I really enjoy working from are narrative therapy. I also do EMDR therapy as well as IFS, internal family systems work. I don't know. And I supervise students.
Yes.
Yes.
You always forget that one.
I do forget it. And I knew I was going to. So I supervise students here, both in practicum placements, as well as supervising therapists out in the community. So we've talked a lot on different episodes about our own supervisors and how we go to supervision. I also provide that to therapists out in the community.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
No problem.
Yeah, so we've introduced ourselves, so maybe we will introduce the topic for today's episode. Today I'm excited for this topic because it's a good one. We're diving into the myth of the resilient therapist, and really kind of looking at what does resilience mean in the context of therapy, but also in being a therapist. Also this idea of how resilience, or the idea of resilience can sometimes work against us in a way. Absolutely, right? Yeah. And also looking at how might we redefine it in a healthier, more supportive way.
I love this episode too. I'm very excited to see where our conversation goes.
Yeah, me too. Okay, let's dive into it then. So first question I'll ask you is, what does resilience mean in this field of therapy, mental health, all of the above?
such a great question. And maybe I'm going to start by saying what I believe it doesn't mean, which will help me get to what it does mean. Mm-hmm. So I think it's often misconstrued as being able to handle everything, to hear and help with everything and have it not impact you. I've had colleagues and other people in the field say to me, I heard the most traumatic thing, but don't worry, I didn't cry. Right? And or, I heard the most sad story, but I'm just so glad that it didn't make me feel anything. Mm-hmm. And often these kinds of conversations are touted as a way that this person was resilient. Yeah. And for me, that makes me really sad and concerned. Because when I hear that, I hear people in our line of work who've learned how to wall off to being in this space with people, mm-hmm. or where compassion is going to be harder to access based on how cognitive that person might be in the room.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So for me, I like to kind of start with those to me are not signs of resilience. They're signs of something's happening for that person that's maybe taking them out of the room, or they've got defense and survival strategies going on in the therapeutic relationship rather than kind of landing in the room with their client. So for me, resilience is easily accessible. Mm-hmm. It's something that, I heard this once from a training I was in, or an educating person for me, who was talking about, we've often build it like it's in like theater build, resilience as something that we just inherently have. Yeah. Instead of resilience is something that is a skill that you not only develop, but then you have to foster. Yes. Right? And so for me, resilience is things like knowing when I need to go to supervision, knowing the things that I'm carrying and holding that don't serve me and or are going to build inside of me and create harm over the long term. Knowing when my walls are up or I can't access compassion in the same way. Yeah. And those are ways that I know that I need to foster more resilience for myself. And then building it as a skill, I think it's, having access to things like joy and comfort and nurture, pieces that are not in that survival-based mindset, but are really kind of in a space where we know it can counter a lot of the heaviness that we hold. Yes. So I think those are keys to being resilient. And we've talked about this before. We've talked about this in social media, where the other thing that's happening is we're normalizing some of the survival strategies that are happening for people as ways that they are taking care of themselves. But interestingly, I think it really it's counterintuitive to resilience. So I'm going to come up with the one, bed rotting. Yes. Which is one we talk about a lot. Yeah. Where this idea that we go to bed at night or in the middle of the day or the middle of the morning and we just lay in bed and watch TV or scroll or whatever, but we're not getting up and taking care of ourselves. We're not moving our bodies. And this is a form of, and I'm going to put this in air quotes, of looking after ourselves. And I would say if we then talk to that same person who'd been doing this as a way of coping and asked them to do something more, would they feel like they could, or would this create overwhelm? That's what I kind of look at when I think about resilience. Resilience would say, oh, I've rested and I've taken care of myself and you're asking me to do something more. Great. Okay, what do I need to do? When we're not taking care of ourselves and I ask you to do something more, your system's going to flood of, I have nothing left, I can't do this, I don't have capacity, and that won't be resilience. Yeah, exactly. Does that make sense?
Makes a lot of sense. It makes me think of there's a difference between resilience and maybe what we might call compartmentalization, right? And as you were kind of saying, resilience is the ability to kind of sit in both camps, if you will, and know when you need rest and to maybe take a break and pour into yourself, but also know when you need to lean into joy and all of those things as well. Compartmentalization is the opposite, right? Which is wow, that looks big and scary and overwhelming, and I can't feel that right now, so I'm not going to. I'm going to put it in a box and walk away from it and probably forget it. I'm not going to come back to the box. And yeah, that's the opposite of resilience. It's avoidance. It's not wanting to like confront that thing that feels really heavy, which also makes so much sense. Like, who wants to like deal with something that looks big and scary and overwhelming? None of us do, but the only way, out of that is through it, right? And I think maybe it might be helpful too to talk about like containment versus compartmentalization as well. And containment can be, I think, a helpful strategy for like practicing resilience. So yeah, containment is like a skill or strategy we might teach clients, and therapists also may use it in their own way. But yeah, it's essentially like one, acknowledging, accepting that there's something really big and uncomfortable happening for us, and we're not quite sure maybe how to navigate it yet, or maybe in that moment we don't have capacity, whether it's physically, emotionally, whatever. And at the same time, we're also acknowledging like, I know I need to deal with that at some point. And it's also okay if I can't right now. So, and I think this is such a big piece of resilience, is acknowledging when you're able and when you're not, right? And maybe can't isn't the right word. It's when you have capacity and maybe when you don't. And so when you don't, you kind of give yourself permission to, visualize or actually take a container of whatever shape or size. It could be a Tupperware container, a box, a bag, anything, just something you can create closure on, and seal it up. And imagine yourself, or actually write out all the things, right, that feel heavy and big, and put it inside of that container. And then we're going to give ourselves permission to maybe take a breath, slow down, and then also give ourselves permission to put the lid on it and close it up, and then put it somewhere safe, right? Like put it somewhere where you can find it. And again, this can all be visualization and imagination, or you can actually physically do it, which people find it more helpful sometimes to do that. But yeah, it's that idea of giving yourself permission to put something heavy away for now, and then know that you need to come back to it. And that is the key difference. Is the key. There's intentionality in, that's big and scary. I don't have capacity for it right now. And I know I'm going to come back to it when I feel ready, or when I have the skills, or maybe when I have more support and working through it in therapy, or a support system outside of therapy, whatever that might look like. But yes, the key difference is there's an intentional effort to go back to that big thing. Whereas avoidance, distraction, compartmentalization is, I'm not going to touch that with a 10-foot pole. Don't talk to me about it. So I think I just wanted to touch on that, because I think it is an important part of resilience for everyone, but also for therapists as well.
Because like you said, it can come to you in the middle of being with a client.
Exactly.
That, it's often, and I think we've talked about this a little bit before as well in separate episodes, where our client is bringing something to the room that very much is something either we're struggling with, or we haven't, gotten support around yet, or, the mirroring that can happen.
Yeah.
And so we have to do this in real time.
Absolutely.
So that we can be present for our clients.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I experienced this like just last week. I think I had a client that was talking about grief and loss. And I think I shared in our last episode that my Nana passed away. And so that was something that was already like sitting in my system. And when a client brought up their experiences of grief, immediately I had that kind of like fire kind of start in your chest. And I had to, as you said, try to stay like present and grounded in the room, and do a bit of that containment. And so it is something, right, that you can do in real time, like in the moment when you need it. And it is a skill that can be really helpful.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I hope everybody's hearing the word skill.
Yeah.
Skill. Because I often have clients sit in front of me and say, oh, well, of course you can do that. Mm-hmm. You're the therapist, you learned about this, whatever it might be. And I appreciate that.
Yes.
I myself have sat in front of therapists when they were teaching me skills, probably thinking the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why the word skill is so important, because it is something that we can introduce, but it does take practice. And it will mean that we won't get it quite right, or it won't feel quite as effective until it feels more natural, because we've practiced it so much. So you and I can sit here and talk about containers and containment because most of the time we feel pretty effective in it because we've practiced it a lot.
Yes.
But we can appreciate that someone who listens to the podcast and decides they're going to go try containment might get frustrated or not see the same benefit because it takes time.
Yeah, and if you do try it, give yourself grace and like slow it down. I always say to clients, practice makes progress with these things, right? And again,
I love that statement.
The goal is never perfection. It is progress, right? So every time you do it, the more familiar that skill becomes to you, the more habitual it becomes. And I think that's just true of like resilience as a skill in general. Of it's not something that comes naturally, and you spoke to this already. It is something that we build and we hone and we foster over time, through lived experience as well. Like the way we learn to be resilient is also through going through hard things. No one becomes resilient because their life is easy and perfect all the time, and that's also just not a reality for anyone. Life is hard. It's, I often think about, there's a theory from acceptance and commitment therapy, and it's maybe less of a theory but more of a underpinning statement for it, of this idea of like this common condition of human suffering. And like, I know the word suffering sounds really intense, but it's true. That is life. Like, we experience really high highs and we also experience really low lows. So there's so much joy and, passion and excitement and laughter and happiness and all of those things. And there's also heartbreak. There's also grief. There's, depression exists. There's loss in so many different capacities. There's a lot of hard stuff we have to go through in life, and this whole idea that everyone is experiencing that, and that's why we call it that common human condition. And also this idea that you can't have the good without the bad. And one of my favorite sayings is the pain of presence versus the pain of absence. And it's kind of exactly how it sounds. Being present is painful. Being present means you're present for all of that amazing, happy, joyful stuff, but you're also present for all the really heavy, sad stuff. And that's life. And so that's where resilience comes in, of how do you navigate those ebbs and flows? How do you support yourself through that? Again, build up the skill. Versus the pain of absence, which means we're missing everything. If you are trying to not feel the heavy stuff, avoid the heavy stuff because you believe you can't do it, you're going to miss all the good stuff too. You can't have one without the other. And I find that saying to be so powerful and impactful, and I love sharing it with clients because sometimes you can see the gears start turning of like, yeah, that makes sense. Like, I do feel like I'm missing out on things or avoiding things or not being present in my life, and it usually is a part of that, right? Of like, you're trying to avoid the heaviness, and if you're doing that, you're also going to miss out on the good stuff.
Makes so much sense.
Yeah.
Thank you. I love those quotes.
Yeah, thank you.
I feel like you in this defined resilience for us.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you think?
No, I think that was a pretty well-rounded definition.
Well, then let's talk about how the idea of resilience, or maybe the way that we navigate it in this field, can become harmful.
Yeah, that's a big question.
I
I think for therapists, where it can become harmful is maybe this idea that like we're not supposed to be affected by what we're hearing, and that is what makes us resilient. And I have people ask me all the time, like, how do you do that? How do you sit in front of people and hear all of these heavy things? Like, don't you get tired of it? Like, what do you say? Like, so many questions that come from, I think, natural curiosity when you're not a therapist and haven't been in the therapist chair. But there is a belief system that like we're just supposed to like take it, deal with it, and it is what it is, right? That we're not impacted by it. And maybe like it sounds more like, well, you signed up for this job, like what did you expect? And so there's this like pressure, like resilience then becomes a pressure or this inherent expectation that like, well, deal with it, right? And I think that's true for everyone sometimes, is like this idea that like resilience has somehow been blended with like not feeling what you're feeling or not acknowledging what's happening for you. And so it's a very fine line, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I wonder if, tell me what you think about this. I wonder too if we're bound by confidentiality. So what our clients talk about in the room stays with us.
Yes.
And with very few exceptions to that. So as a result, people in our life don't know what we hear and what we sit with.
Yeah.
And some of those comments, I think, come out of that, right? Of like, well, this is the career you chose.
Yeah.
This is what you wanted to do. And so I think sometimes we get confused between, keeping confidentiality and being able to express the emotions and being able to express the impact.
Yeah.
To a supervisor or a colleague or whatever, because those two things are not the same. We don't need to tell a client's story to be able to tell how it impacted us.
Yes. Yeah.
And so I wonder if that is part of the harm. I do reflect on my education sometimes and think we weren't really told how to go to supervision well.
Yeah.
Right?
It's so true.
Yeah. So like for a lot of us, I see this in the people that come to me, but I also remember this experience for myself. It can feel like we're going to get criticism. It can feel like we're going to someone to be told how terrible we are. And so we can become really protective of what we share or see some of these things like I'm impacted by a client story, or I haven't been able to let that go, or I'm, crying as a result of what I heard as flawed or incapable. And so then it doesn't get support. That's what we end up holding and keeping to ourselves. So I just think it was a missed opportunity in our education system to talk about what do we bring to supervision? How do we bring this to supervision? How do we see it as not a place where we're criticized, but rather a place where these things are explored, because of course you're going to be impacted. So that's just one way I think that in this profession there can be harm as a result. I also think it's important for us to talk about how the structure and the system fails us too. Which is, a lot of times resilience is this idea of being built into make sure to check all the check boxes, make sure to meet all the deadlines, because a lot of what we do out in the community is funded by outside parties that require checks and balances. And the personhood that is integral to resilience is overlooked. So sometimes we're working in systems that don't help us either. And that can happen in private practices and group practices as well, where if we're in a space where we don't get the opportunity to brief with each other, or we don't see our colleagues or spend time with our colleagues, we're in that isolated space, then we have to hold a lot until we get to supervision.
I feel that deeply. I guess not before, but I previously worked in a community health center, and I was fresh out of my master's program, and I was bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, excited.
As we all started.
To work, and that was something I experienced, unfortunately, and ultimately left me with the decision to leave that job because I was burnt out. I think I did it for 8 months or something, and the toll it was taking on me was so big. And it was exactly that of I was dealing with a lot of complex high risk crisis clients, and that whole idea of systems failing us. I had nowhere to send them, no resources to give them. I knew what they needed but couldn't give it to them, and that's that idea of systemic trauma, right, as a therapist. And then it's also nicely bundled with, and I say nicely with sarcasm, this expectation that you're just supposed to okay, bounce back on to the next 8 clients in your day. They want you to jam pack your schedule, and just this expectation that you just bounce back up and keep going, and you're not gonna feel the heaviness of that. And We do, and it sometimes feels like the weight of the world is on your shoulders, and also can feel like someone's life is in your hands, essentially, which it never is. We are not capable of, intervening in something like that to a certain extent, of course. But yeah, like, it's a big responsibility. It's a heavy job at times, and yeah, I think, again, this idea that, like, we're just supposed to, like, be okay and keep going, and I so agree with what you said about, like, that fear of criticism or fear of, like, judgment because you're not resilient enough, right, is something that kind of definitely shows up for me. And I don't want to say that, like, any other professionals don't get it, because I do believe that first responders, any health professional, like, a lot of people who are in positions where you're, like, providing clients with a service in this way do feel it. But therapy, again, is a very unique position to be in as a therapist.
Yeah. And so, like, there isn't an opportunity. What I hear in that is there isn't an opportunity to be resilient because we're being bombarded, and there isn't any breathing room and downtime, and the skills that we need to practice around being resilient, there isn't the structures and the supports that we need to do it.
Yeah.
Right? So, like, sure, the first couple of times, because we're not immune to trauma, we're not immune to the emotional toll and impact. And you said the word burnout, which I love. It's a little teaser for the next episode.
Yeah.
And so, because resilience is a skill, if there's no time or space to practice it, it
can feel like sink or swim, right? Like, if you're not, in a space where you're being given permission to practice resilience, as we've been talking about, well, it's not going to be there as a skill that supports us. Yeah. Okay. Do you feel like that kind of touches on all the places where maybe resilience can become harmful?
I'm sure there's more.
Probably.
For me, I'm at my capacity in terms of how I can think about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so maybe to kind of create a nice summation of this, our last kind of talking point or question is, what might a healthier version of resilience look like?
So we keep talking skill, practice.
Yes.
And I think that's the one piece is, and there's studies on this, and because I have not looked into them before this episode, I'm not going to talk too much about it, but just to say, there was a consensus in research when we used to say things like children are resilient, right? Children would go through things, they'd experience, the news after 9/11, for instance. And we as and I'm going to talk North American culture, would often say things like children are resilient, they'll get through this, they'll, they're not as impacted because whatever. This was a mantra. And then we started realizing, hey, and there was huge studies, ACE study is one that I think about, where we start looking and going, wait, why are some children okay and coping and managing and getting through, and some aren't? And when we looked at the difference, the children that we thought of as resilient had all these supports and strategies and skills around them that helped foster resilience. So it turned out that kids were not just inherently resilient. They had things and skills and strategies and supports that helped them to build something like resilience. So a healthier version is for us to get away from a notion that resilience is as a word enough to make us resilient. And that it needs to be built and supported. And I think that support piece is also huge. And you know me, I talk a lot about community care instead of self-care. Which is, we're so used to making the individual responsible for how they manage and cope in the world. And we aren't looking at how the community and the world is impacting that individual's ability to care for themselves. So for me, resilience is supported through the care in our profession, whether that's our colleagues and the ability to debrief or hold or be with. I mean, you and I can both testify to the fact that more than one of us have come into the kitchen and just burst into tears.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And been supported and cared for. Nobody moves on. Nobody leaves us hanging. We aren't told to suck it up and get back out there. We have another client. Like, the space is held for us to feel and be supported with compassion. So I think, our supervisors need to be people that understand this as well. And while there's skill building from a modality perspective, just also making sure that those people have the care and support from a compassion perspective too. Building confidence and self-love.
Yeah,
right?
I love that. Yeah,
I think are important pieces that we all have a responsibility to one another. There are things happening in our profession, and I'm not going to deep dive into this, but there are things happening in our profession that are pitting us against one another, whether it's modalities that, people that really love one modality over another, and that we're talking to one another as though we're not good enough because we don't adhere to these modalities, or our credentials, or there's a lot of divisiveness. And I would just really hope that we could come together to realize and support one another, because I do think that's what healthier resilience looks like.
Yeah.
That although this profession can feel isolating because we do have the things that we have to hold because they're ours with our clients, I would hope that when we leave that room, feel like we're walking into, a warm, compassionate space.
Yeah, I think that's beautifully put. And definitely leads me into a couple things, I guess, that come up for me when I think about a healthier version of resilience. And one of them is, again, leaning into the humanness of it, right? This idea that we're not just robots, moving through life in these experiences. I think to be resilient means to feel and know what you need when you're feeling. And that's what I mean when I say leaning into the humanness of it. And also self-compassion. You talked about receiving compassion from, peer support, others around us. But I also think such a big part of resilience is, can you give yourself grace? Can you give yourself that compassion and that care when you might need it? And part of that is recognizing when you're feeling the heaviness, when you need that break, when you need that support, when you need to, again, do something like containment. The only way you're going to be able to identify that is by being attuned with your body, your feelings, your nervous system, all of those parts working in tandem. And self-compassion, again, is such a big part of that.
And can I add?
Yeah.
I just want to add this. And if you can't be that, be around people that are willing to say to you, hey, I've noticed, or hey, are you doing okay?
Yeah, totally. Because self-compassion, and I do a lot of this work with clients, so it is not an easy thing to access. And it's, unfortunately, I could go on and on about this, in its own podcast episode. We suck at being kind to ourselves. We were never taught how to do that. We're taught so much and so well about how to give others grace, how to be kind to others. I think about the golden rule in school where it's do unto others as you do unto yourself. And it's we do the others part, but not necessarily ourselves.
Well, did you know that you got that quote just a little bit wrong, and that might be the reason?
Oh, did I?
It's, so do unto others as you would want done upon to yourself.
Right.
So it doesn't actually teach us what we would want in terms of our own kindness.
That actually was why I had a part in me that was I don't think that's right. So thank you for that correction. Yeah, right. But yes, that's the whole idea, right? Is it's all about doing things for others and then others doing things for us, right? And the self gets lost in that. And we're not good at it. When we say, or I say to a client rather, self-compassion, there's kind of this deer in the headlights look of, what? How do I do that? How does one practice that? And I just want to validate that struggle and that maybe confused part that's I don't know how to do that. Or a part that also feels overwhelmed by that, because I think we're also conditioned to push ourselves and, negatively motivate ourselves with there's a fear or consequence or a punishment if you don't do X, Y, and Z, rather than this forward-looking approach that is, motivated by compassion, encouragement, optimism, hope, right? All of those things. they kind of go in different directions. And I'm kind of going off on a tangent about self-compassion, but just kind of looping it back to this.
We'll do a podcast on self-compassion.
Yeah, next season. But yeah, I do think like it is a big part of resilience is compassion for the self. And as a little tidbit, if that is something that feels hard for you to offer to yourself, we can do something called the compassionate other, which means kind of either conjuring up like an image or a visualization of, you know, maybe a made up person, but also maybe a real person in your life that you love and care about and would want to support. And if you could imagine them coming to you, you know, saying that they were struggling and feeling with, you know, all the same feelings that you're having, and then thinking about what might you say to them, what offer of, you know, kindness, compassion could you give them, or, you know, what might you say? My guess is it wouldn't be something that's like, you suck, get it together, and like, you know, pull yourself up by your bootstraps and keep going. Yeah. It probably would be, wow, that sounds really heavy. That sounds really hard. Like, are you okay? You know, or maybe a message of encouragement, a message of compassion, you know, a message of grace, anything. And once you have that message, kind of, you know, asking yourself, can I reflect that back to me, right? And if that feels too hard, you can also maybe imagine this like compassionate being, which again might be a real person in your life, but also maybe just an imaginary visualization, and imagine them giving you that message, right? If it feels hard to give it to yourself. But yeah, in summation, self-compassion is a big part of resilience.
I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I love that you gave some strategies.
Yeah.
How helpful is that?
Yes. I always like to give some tangible things, you know? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we're at the part where we talk about the glimmers and the edges from this past week. Mm-hmm. And so, because I got to introduce the topic, I get to put it on you first.
Yeah.
So what would be one glimmer? And again, just reminding for our listeners, a glimmer for us is something grounding or meaningful or enlightening that you've experienced this week. And then one edge, which is something that's maybe challenging or still sitting with you, or a learning piece that you want to grow from.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Glimmer, this is an easy one for me because it just happened yesterday. Yeah, one of my best friends, she's engaged, and so yeah, I have a trio of best friends, myself and my two besties, and yeah, we spent the day in Toronto yesterday doing a little bachelorette day for my friend. She's doing a very small, more like elopement style wedding, but we still wanted to celebrate her as the bride. So yeah, we had a really fun girls' day in downtown Toronto. We went to brunch and we went to see Water for Elephants at the Ed Mirvish Theater. It was a wonderful show. I highly recommend. It was very good. Very, very good. Lots of great singing, acrobatics, dancing. It was amazing. Yeah, and then we went and did this making your own lipstick at the Lip Lab in Toronto in the Distillery District, which was so fun. I've never done anything like that before, but you can create like a custom shade that is like matched to your skin, like they walk you through it and everything. So my best friend, she made like the lipstick she's gonna wear on her wedding day, which is so sweet. And they like engrave the tubes and you get to pick the colors. Like it's very fun. Highly recommend. It felt very much, I remember saying to my friend, I was like, this feels like girlhood, like at its core. And I loved it. It was such a fun experience. Yeah, so that's my glimmer. Yeah, an edge for me, I'm tired. And maybe tired is not the right word. Fatigued is maybe what I'm feeling. Again, grief is something I'm experiencing right now, and I'm definitely kind of feeling like I'm in the trenches of that. And part of that struggle for me is acknowledging what I'm feeling, which maybe feels fitting for like our whole conversation around resilience today. Yeah, and just like letting people in. I think that's definitely been something as I reflect on this experience with grief. I have a part that is kind of walling me off, and I'm recognizing that that's not helpful. And so, but that's also a hard part to get to kind of soften. And so I'm trying to work with that and be kind and gentle with it where I can, and also letting people in and reminding myself it's okay to have people show up and care for me, and also acknowledging at the same time it's tiring work. So yeah, that would be my edge.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Okay, my
Your turn.
I know. I'm trying to think of. I've just come back from holidays, and I felt very productive. But I'm also so aware that holidays don't need to be an accomplishment list made and completed kind of time. So maybe that's also a bit of an edge. No, we're enjoying our new home, our pool. I'm watching my kids have so much joy in it, and I went in it. And
Yay!
So here's a fun fact about me. When I was growing up, I had a pool, and so did some friends. And diving, I don't know which one of my parents, and maybe it was a parent's friend, who loved teaching diving, but we would spend hours perfecting like good diving. Yeah. Probably from a safety perspective too. So I can dive well. I can't do some things in the pool well, but I can dive well. So my daughter loves to have diving competitions between her and the family members. Yeah. And I have often been the scorekeeper on the sidelines. But this past week, I was in there doing the diving.
Good for you.
Yeah. I even let her capture a picture of me doing it.
Oh, wow. That is impressive.
There you go. So yeah, so then I'm going to also be real and go with that edge of how hard it can be to rest, which I also think is a good add-on to this topic of resilience as well. Of, I think sometimes we can feel like we have so many things, or we can believe. It's not a feeling, it's a belief that we have so many things that need to be accomplished. I mean, I own a home, I have a family. I think that list exists at work, but it also exists at home. And so when I got extra time, like having time off, it felt like I needed to do all those things that had been sitting there left for evenings and weekends. And, fatigue is real too. And maybe just differentiating between tired and fatigue. Tired is, maybe we didn't get enough sleep. Maybe we haven't been well rested. Fatigue is emotional, physical, psychological. Everything that we try to get energy from is depleted. And so I think that that's been a real thing as well. Yeah. So yeah, just reminding myself that resting is important and healthy and is going to give me what I need to come back.
Absolutely.
To work, but also come back to my family for what they need from me too.
Yeah, right? I think that's beautiful. And a very important message to share as well. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so as we kind of work towards wrapping up today's episode, we will share where you can find us. We are everywhere. You can't get rid of us. For social media, you can find us on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, TikTok. We have an account for our podcast, After the Last Client. Instagram is Common Tree Counselling, as well as Facebook. We also have a super informative and helpful website, which is commingtree.ca or commingtreecounseling.ca. For our podcast, you can listen on Apple Music, Spotify, and YouTube. And as Melissa said at the beginning, you can actually watch us on Spotify and YouTube, the video, if you would like to see our pretty faces. And we also want to remind you to click the like button or the subscribe button so that you can get updates and be notified when there's a new episode coming out. We haven't been doing that, and this is part of our learning curve, as this being our first podcast. So we're putting that out there of like, make sure you follow us on whether, again, it's Spotify, Apple Music, whatever. So that you can catch all of our future episodes.
That's a very good suggestion.
Yes.
And thank you for that. And just a little bit about Common Tree Counselling and Psychotherapy. We did mention, so we're in Kitchener, Ontario, which is southwestern area of Ontario. And we provide both in-person and virtual therapy to children as young as 4, all the way up to infinity. And we have several therapists working here with us who provide therapy to those different age groups, but also to different concerns that may come through the door. And so you can look for us online, as Hilary said, on the website that she had mentioned. And just as a little teaser, we hope you come back for our 7th and last episode for the season.
Yes.
But don't worry, we have another season.
We'll be back.
Where we'll be building on this conversation, and we're going to talk about burnout with a special guest.
Yeah, so exciting.
Yay!
Okay.
All right. So, as we normally say, take good care.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Nailed it.
Woohoo!